Hey everyone, welcome to the Onchain India Podcast, where we are celebrating entrepreneurs and some terrific use cases, brewing in India. Today we have Karam from Dabba Network, who are building phenomenal DePIN project, which is built in India and is used in India. So it's a very interesting use case, which Dabba has been brewing it, for quite some time now. Throwing some lights on the statistics, they've got like I think 1,500 plus hotspots, which are being installed. They have, I think more than 20,000 plus, users who are actively, utilizing the network, and they have managed to raise funds from giants like Multicoin, Borderless, and ycombinator. So it's going to be an interesting one to deep dive into the journey of Dabba and also, share some highlights, from Karam as well. Welcome to the Onchain India podcast, Karam.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Let's dive in. So, Karam, before starting, would love to understand, how your journey into Web3 has been. What was that initial aha moment, for you to come in this space?
Yeah, for sure. For us, it was actually a very natural evolution. We always had this idea that this connectivity layer that we were building, this Wi Fi network that we were building, we always wanted as many people to participate in it as possible because we used to, for example, power Google public Wi Fi, among other things, apart from our own network. And over multiple years, we would always get at least one email or phone call or something to someone on our team going, "Hey, I love what you guys are doing. Do you have a franchise model? Can you bring it to my area?" All of these things. So at some point, we decided, okay, let's start a program like this. Let's see if the public is willing to put its money where its mouth is and build an actual network like this. So we devised a way to decentralize the whole thing, but using traditional fiat currency. And two things happened. The first is we've got overwhelming demand from all over the globe to participate in helping build this network. And we realized with the fiat model that becomes very expensive and almost impossible because you have cross-border transactions, settlement times, and for a startup and that sort of thing, absolutely unviable if tens of thousands or 100,000 people around the world are participating in your project. So fiat was not possible. The second thing was at this time, Helium had just taken off as a project, and hundreds of people started reaching out to us going, "Have you heard of this thing called Helium? Do you know what Helium is doing?" That sort of thing. So when we dove into the world of Helium and crypto and DePIN, that's when we realized, oh my God, that was the light bulb moment. This is an exact perfect use case fit for exactly what we want to accomplish. And there is no other way to do it except this way. And this is the best way to do it. So for us, it was this very natural journey that sort of happened.
Also, sharing some light on this, Karam. So when you started, obviously, you had this and you had the initial validation, to come along. But just before step on that, specifically when you're starting and, as you said, the ideas are fragmented. You don't know, what sort of audience would be there and something. Is there sort of any mental model you used at that time saying, what, this is what it is, and, you guys are going to pursue it, really, really good?
Yeah, for sure. I think the thing that has been very useful for us is the best way to evaluate what we are doing is one of two things. Either the growth is ridiculously rapid. So let's say we have a tool or a website of some sort, and you want to get a lot of users on it. You want to be getting hundreds of thousands of users or millions of users a month. That's one way to measure whether the thing that you're doing is worth it, that the message or the concept or the use case spreads so rapidly, it's insane. The second more useful way also is charge people money for your thing. So for us to validate knowing that Dabba was going to turn out, from the very first Dabba that we installed in a small chaiwala near our office, we always charged for internet access. It was a very reasonable price, 1 rupee, 2 rupee, that sort of thing. But we wanted to make sure there are no free users on the internet, on our network, simply because it is the most effective way to validate whether what you're doing is useful. People will say wonderful things about your service. They might even use your service or whatever. But the ultimate test is, okay, thanks for using my service. Now please pay for it. So we're very stringent about when we put something out, we ideally like to charge for it because that strips away all of any misconceptions or ideas or hopes and dreams we have about the product. So anything that we do, we try to measure it against hard demand, hard reality.
Got it. More deep diving into actual the Dabba network, right, Karam? I think you guys have an interesting model. One is, I think, anybody in the world can buy the hotspots, and these hotspots are deployed for you, and obviously earn the rewards as it goes into the mainstream. And at the back end, I think what I really loved is the kind of models that you have been deploying, going through local towns and cities, and everywhere where this data accessibility is still an issue, considering India, the 5G wave, which has been really boosted up. So I would love to understand, how were the initial days of the deployment? What was the kind of response that you were getting from a lot of users, and how does the LCO and the other more from the demand side of it, how does it affect them, and how are things carried along?
Yeah, so I think there are two incredibly unique things that are there in our market. And that's part of the reason why we've chosen to tackle this market, because it's got an overwhelming amount of demand, which is to say, people who want internet access and are willing to pay for it, specifically in broadband. And the second thing is, we figure there's a very defensible way to actually scale up enough to be able to deliver that demand in a long term and sustainable way. So a little bit of background is, you would think that, like the average person believes that the same way in 4G and 5G, you have one or two providers and it's basically a monopoly. In broadband, India is actually very interesting. Our market is very unique. We have something like 150,000 local cable operators, right? These are guys who are running satellite TV, cable TV networks, right? They've got a dish pointed at the sky, and for their neighborhood of a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand subscribers, they're basically giving cable TV. All 150,000 of these, 150K of them, have to either evolve or die, which is to say that they all have to turn into ISPs and start expanding service that way, because everybody means everybody is switching over to streaming services and starting to watch less and less cable TV. So what we do is we take all of the lessons that all of the classic killer Web 2 companies did, right? Uber, Airbnb, people like that. And we aggregate all of these providers and help them expand their network by providing them better technology, better tools, better DeFi, and ultimately best practices to help them expand their network. So this way, what we're doing is the end customer gets their connection from their local cable operator, and through us, the local cable operator is able to give higher internet speeds than any competitor, if there's a competitor in the area. To give you a sense of scale, we're giving out on the order of a gigabit, like a 1 Gbps connection, at about 500, 600 rupees, thereabouts, which is almost 5 to 6 times cheaper than any other major provider out there. The second thing is, it allows us to, using these LCOs, allows us to have on-ground experts who are delivering the best connectivity possible, because this is their local area and they've been serving these customers well already. So in this sense, this is a very ground up aggregated approach where we'll be able to deliver millions of hotspots across the country in all manner of cities and at all manner of price points in a really efficient way, because the goal is to deploy something like 500 million broadband connections over the next 10 years or so, right? Because India's got a long way to go in its connectivity.
Great. And while I was also seeing, some of the deployments, Karam, I think you've got some really, tier two, tier three cities, in different states and stuff, right? And I mean, the obvious challenge comes is, how do these guys understand the DeFi? I mean, Web3 itself is, not very highly penetrated into India part of it, right? So how is the onboarding of these LCOs, and is there some sort of onboarding Web3 sessions that you guys take for them, or have you done more like, hey, you know what, it's a plain process, you do what you do, you just use Dabba and it's super convenient for you?
Yeah, great question. So, one of the interesting things that not many people know is, I think India has the second largest amount of crypto wallets. So, there's a shocking amount of exposure that a lot of these guys have. Because if you look at the profile of who a local cable operator is, think mid 20s to 40s male with some level of electronics and understanding and a little bit of sophistication, right? This is a guy that, maybe used to run a cell phone repair shop or something some way related because he's able to hook up a satellite system and deliver it and handle. So there's a level of competence there. 100% pretty much most of across all of the LCOs that we are onboarding, they have bought tokens before, they know how this whole thing works, and they are blown away by the fact that, okay, someone's bringing all of that, crypto and tokenomics in a way that actually matters to them. So we've actually had a shocking amount of acceptance and understanding of how this process is going to play out. And we think that that's going to develop even more dramatically because one of the fun things in our network is if you are a Dabba subscriber in a small town, let's say the outskirts of Pune or the hinterlands of Maharashtra and Islampur or something, right? You've got one of our connections there. You also earn a tiny amount of tokens for being the location provider, because our hotspots not only give you your private internet connection, so, it would be Pratik's Wi-Fi with Pratik's password, but it also spits out another Wi-Fi signal, which is public Wi-Fi. It's called Dabba. Anyone can connect to that, right? Because all Wi-Fi signals extend out of homes and that sort of thing. So if a delivery guy, a security guard, a maid, a driver, or whatever, right, there's this massive transient population of people who don't have access to Wi-Fi in their home or house or anything. So they find that as we get more coverage, they tend to connect to these networks more. So we think that the acceptance for crypto among the LCOs has been great. Now that hotspot, people who actually use the internet connection are going to get a tiny amount of rewards and on-ramp onto crypto that way. We think we'll get an even larger audience. And then on top of that, as the public Wi-Fi part of it extends, that audience will get even better. So we're moving through this nice chain of people who understand it really well to who understand it a little bit, and then who understand it even less, but in a way that's relatable to all of them. So yeah, we're really excited about on-ramping more people to crypto.
Yeah, and I think you guys, are onboarding the real on-chain, India users, specifically by, utilizing a use case which is already being popular and empowering them with, all these sort of tools and, new age sort of money which is coming in, which is ultimately, benefiting to them. So it's a really a noble, sort of work, I would say, apart from the business angle of it, that you guys have been implementing. And I had a chance to actually speak to, so one of my friend, stays in that Sangli Kolhapur, sort of belt. And surprisingly,
Oh,
he was like, hey, this, you work in Web3. There's this company called Dabba, who is saying, they're going to do tokens. Is it a scam or something like that? I said, no, no, they're very legit. You should go on. So, I mean, it's really good thing that you're penetrating, all these, sort of, different cities.
definitely. People of Sangli, we're coming for you. We're in Islampur. We know how close you are. Network is expanding very soon.
Nice. One other, joint question for this, Karam, is like, uh, since it's a broadband and it's a wired, sort of thing which is coming in. Say, for example, if I have to deploy in my hometown, which is say the border of Gujarat or something around that,
Hmm.
how will that take into place? Because there are a lot of these Web3, enthusiasts. Like we're seeing, like a lot of these Web3 developers and new age people, they want to utilize this sort of DePIN, culture on that. So how easy, or how, what's the process for them to deploy at their hometowns?
Yeah, so this is a two-stage process that we're going to be evolving over the next couple of years. So right now, one of the reasons that we partnered with the local cable operators is that they already have the on-ground expertise and ability to lay overhead fiber optic cable from their closest point of presence to basically their closest network switch to whatever end customer's house. That's going to work really well. It's working really well. It will continue to do so. We will deploy millions of connections this way. But the scale of the problem is so big and the opportunity is so large, and the willingness for people to deploy connections is so big, not only in India, but in other developing nations as well. To serve that, we are creating this thing, what we call ISP in a box. So there are two key parts to the internet of how it works that you need to know. So the first bit that I just talked about is the fiber optical cable that comes into your house. That connects to a close switch to wherever the local ISP has his closest connectivity. The second part of that system, so that's called the last mile. The second part of the system is called the middle mile. This is where in developing nations it's there, but in places like India where things is developing, it doesn't exist. But basically, from that point, you have underground fiber, which goes under the city and then connects at the edge of the city to fiber under a national highway or a railway line and that sort of thing. So now the biggest challenge that connectivity has in India and developing countries is the fact that laying this middle mile, this underground fiber, is insanely expensive and takes a lot of time and requires a lot of regulation, right? Because you have to dig up the road, you have to get local permissions for every road, you have to get clearances for each one of those, and then it takes time to do all of that. And then because India is a developing country, the moment you dig up the road and put your fiber optical cable, electricity department, water department, someone will come 1 month later, dig it up again and cut your cable. Right? India has something like 7 to 10x the number of normal fiber cuts than any other country has because we're developing and there's this constant churn of construction that's happening. So to solve that, we're actually bringing in this incredibly novel idea of we are going to put lasers on rooftops of buildings. We've already developed this technology. It's rolling out in the field. We're testing it in Bangalore. But to replace this underground fiber, we're going to build a grid of lasers across the city to form a core network. This is incredibly important because A, the lasers are crazy cheap, right? In any city, it costs you something like 1.5 crore per kilometer to dig a road and redo it and lay cable and all of that. Our lasers will be less than 1 lakh rupees per laser, right? So it's going to be nearly almost 100x cheaper. And our lasers take all of 5 minutes to set up versus the 3 weeks per kilometer or 1 month per kilometer that it takes. Thing. So we're going to revolutionize this. The short version of this is we're going to be creating the system that we call ISP in a box, where we will send you the middle mile, we will send you the last mile cable, and we will send you the hardware routers. And if you come from a small town of like, let's say, 5 lakh people or 10 lakh people or that sort of thing, we will send you a shipping container. And in less than 1 week, you will be able to provide your entire town with gigabit internet connectivity at an incredibly affordable price. So our goal is to spend the next year polishing this system out so we can dramatically scale. But there's a ton of innovation that has been ignored in this operational capability that we're going to bring out new cool things for as we go forward.
Pretty sounds pretty interesting, right? I think the lasers and the all new high tech, and I can't wait to see all these sort of POCs actually getting converted and utilization. Really excited to see this. Karam, as we go deep down, I think one of the other fundamental problem which a lot of the entrepreneurs face in India is on the regulation part, and I think you are at the one of the topmost tiers, because of all these things. So my question to you is, has there been, or how did you tackle any sort of regulation issue with the government so far with Dabba? And the consequent question is, a lot of these young founders who are looking for stable coins or new age sort of these things, what is the most ideal way for them to deal with all the regulatories considering they're deploying over here in India?
Yeah, for sure. So you're right. We sit at a very interesting location, which is the intersection of crypto and telecom, right? Both frontier technologies and areas. The one thing that I'd like to say is it's been remarkable how foresighted and how good in their perspective the Indian government is when it comes to increasing connectivity in India. And I'll give you a little background why. It's taken India 30 years, dozens of telcos, hundreds of billions of dollars to reach only really 50, 60% mobile broadband, like 4G, 5G connectivity, and less than 5% broadband connectivity. So if we continue at this rate, it's going to take India another 50 years to connect the remaining people, right? And that's not an acceptable timeline. So one of the interesting things is our government has a really good view on how to improve connectivity across the country. And so we worked with them to help draft the policy of PM Vani, right? And this is a really consequential piece of legislation which allows anybody to resell and reshare data. And so this takes away a lot of the monopoly that a lot of small traditional providers could have, and puts the power of redistributing data and consequentially connectivity into the hands of people, and do it in a way where you can incentivize people, right? So number one is, this is one of those areas, and if you're a founder, try to find one of these areas where it's a happy coincidence that it aligns well with what is good for the overall nation, and in a way that the government is seeing things in a manner that's going to be useful in the long run for everybody. So in the telco regulation, we're there. On the crypto side of the regulation, look, it's going to take a couple of years for this stuff to really play out. You have to, as a founder, make sure you are as compliant as everything as possible, and we do this at Dabba. It is painful, there's no doubt about it. It slows you down, no doubt about it. But in the long run, the stuff will sort itself out. Just chalk it under another problem you have to deal with as a company. But I don't think it should be anything that prevents you from doing useful things. You'll find a way out.
That's a very sage advice. I've been, speaking to a lot of founders, who are typically into that regulatory hurdles, and sometimes, it's just at the stop because they don't know how things will go, or how to tackle on this. So definitely, this sort of advice and help, specifically from you
Yeah, I
would
think a better way to put it actually as a simple principle is, as a founder, accept that in the technology business, accept that you are building on the frontiers of what is possible. So when it comes to regulation, it will always be a gray area. You saw this happen when Facebook and everything first started. People were like, wait, if someone is my friend, does that mean I'm telling the whole world that they're actually my friend? Right? And there was unclear about what is user privacy, but the world figured that out. You saw that with Uber and Airbnb and everyone saying, wait, you're aggregating informal resources and all of that. Is it against taxi? Whatever, man. Everyone figured it out. This is the new area. We'll figure it out. Don't let that stop you.
amazing advice. Karam, deep diving into the fundraising aspect of it, and I'm pretty sure you based over here in India, and facing some of these hurdles because India as a whole thing, we do not have a lot of homegrown venture, specifically Web3, sort of things to do, uh, and you've managed to get some amazing sort of funds to back you guys up over here. So, what would be your fundraising advice typically for founders or developers, who are in their early stages? What would be that, step by step process, for them to get some actual good results?
Yeah. So if you're in the early stage, consider yourself lucky. You're actually in the best space possible. This is the easiest time for you to raise money than compared to any other point in your company. So consider yourself lucky here. The second thing is the world is genuinely flat. Everybody knows everybody. It is extraordinarily easy for good people who are willing to invest in your startup to find their way to you. So talk to as many people as possible. Word will guaranteed spread. This third thing is just do that because every single investor, startup, founder, anybody that's been successful in this space is looking for new, interesting things to put their money into, especially as early as possible, because that's when they get the best returns. So, genuinely, don't shy away from talking about what it is that you're doing, and do it in a high touch manner where you're personally connecting with as many people as possible. Attend as many events as you can, talk to as many people as you can over there. Just do that grind for a bit, and you will find that your fundraising issues will take care of themselves.
Got it. Kind of moving on to the next parts. I think what Dabba has seen is an incredible home run from 0 to 1, sort of an aspect where you have users who are believing in the tech. You have some amazing backers who can go at length to support these things, and you're also at a cusp of token launch, sort of that narrative as we see the shift down in the market. So how is the so 0 to 1 journey is being done? 1 to 10x sort of journey. How are you guys planning for it? How hard you're going to make the name of Dabba in national and international waters both.
Yeah, for sure. So I think you're right. A lot of the 0 to 1 journey was spent on figuring out how to build a product, what it should be like, is there product market fit, covering the basics of do you have, like, can we get users? Are they willing to pay for us? Is this sustainable? Is this scalable? That sort of thing. The next stage of evolution for us is entirely about building awareness and building scale of the network. One of the ways to dramatically scale the size of our network and build its awareness is to increase the manner with which we incentivize people to participate in this network. And that's why we're launching a token. Because what this allows us to do is, in the most effective, frictionless manner, this allows us to align all of the stakeholders that it takes to deliver an internet connection, right? You can use the token to incentivize people to buy hotspots. You can use the token to incentivize LCOs to provide better services, maintain a specific level of uptime. You can use the token to subsidize other costs in the network and do way more interesting things, bring in developers and all of that. So the token allows us to increase the surface area with which various parties can interact with the project and participate in it. The second thing that we're doing is we're dramatically amping up the amount of marketing and communications effort that we put in the most fun and engaging way that we can think about. So we have a ridiculous number of quests coming out where if you follow us on Twitter, if you buy a hotspot, if you buy a couple of hotspots, you'll get another DePIN device for free and that sort of thing. So we've got a tremendous number of things happening over there. The other area that's really interesting is we found a large number of people want to tell the stories of how the hotspot is making life better in various cities and towns and that sort of thing. So we're going to be bringing a lot of highlighting those stories. So our goal over the next couple of months is we're going to scale the network by a factor of 10x roughly, right? We've got just about 1,500, 1,600 hotspots live so far. That in the next 90 days is going to grow to 10,000 hotspots. So we've got ridiculous partnerships with some of the major meme coins that all of you have heard about and are thinking about trading in. You're going to see a buy this Dabba and get this meme coin and a whole bunch of things like that also come into play. So partnerships with other projects so that we can bring more communities in is also a large part of our roadmap. So the short version of it is once you cross that 0 to 1 chasm where you figured out the basics, the rest of it is entirely about increasing the surface area with which the people can participate with your project with, increasing marketing and communication so that people know that you exist. And the third is being able to partner with other projects and other ancillary areas that widen the horizon of the people that might participate with you and bring new ideas and things in.
Glad to hear those all 10x journey thoughts, and I'm pretty sure you guys would be able to cross that and have like a great name. As we're coming to the end of the podcast, Karam, one last question, before we leave off is, DePIN is really booming, entire worldwide. I think we have seen some phenomenal sort of use case which are brewing in different parts of the world, and some big companies who are doing some use cases in India as well. As you highlighted initially, India is a very, very attractive sort of markets because of the population, because of the crypto awareness and the the wallet numbers and other sheer things. Uh, Say someone who is like a founder at very, very early stage, who's still trying to figure things out and is interested in the deep in segment. What would be your advice specifically for them? And do you have any top 3 4 moonshot ideas in deepen that you think that if someone really goes after this, it might turn out into huge success?
Yeah, for sure. I think I can answer both of those questions in a way that, in with using like a framework that we have started to think about of where we fit in the world of deepin and crypto and that sort of thing. And I think if there's someone who's watching this who's thinking about, I want to get into deepin, what should I do? How do I fit in? How does this work? All of that sort of stuff. Um, it's worth thinking of the deepin world in 3 layers, right? So right on top, at layer 2, you can create a piece of software that makes a piece of hardware better. So say, for example, you have a gaming computer at home. You can create a piece of software that allows the GPU to be contributed to a larger pool of GPUs and train AI models and that sort of thing. So you can create a piece of software that allows you to share unused hard drive space to create distributed storage, things like that, right? So one way to look at things is you can make software that takes advantage of existing hardware. One layer below that, at sort of layer one, is you can make hardware that plugs into other hardware and takes advantage of that. Two examples of this could be Helium or Hive Mapper, right? So let's say you want to do a mapping startup. You create a dash cam sort of thing and sell it to people with cars. So they plug in this dash cam into their car and it helps map the roads as they drive along. And yeah, you can compete with Google Maps this way. You can create maybe a smart electricity meter that plugs into your home's electricity main and provides statistics on electricity usage across homes to help maybe power companies and the government plan generation better and that sort of thing, right? So hardware that plugs into existing hardware. Layer zero, right at the bottom, is you can look at things where there is nothing there and you have to build it from scratch. A good way to think about it is be ambitious, right? DePIN is physical infrastructure. So roads, water, connectivity, power generation, all of these things, right? And I think there's a strong value in focusing on the layer zero part of it. Because if you build a foundational layer like we do, which is a basic level of connectivity, one is it's very resilient and long term. When you put it in there, it's going to be there for the next 20 years. So you got a long time to live and figure out and grow, and it's a massive thing. The second thing is by default, anything that comes after that will sit on top of your infrastructure in some format because you're providing that basic layer. So again, your moat and your value is even better. So that's another thing. The third thing is, especially if you're listening from a developing nation or coming from India, opportunities like this exist best in developing nations where this layer zero infrastructure doesn't exist. So these are problems that can be solved, local to you. So we think that this is a good framework of thinking about how to get involved in DePIN and then maybe to think about the tokenomics where the friction is low to convince someone to install a piece of software, but that means the competition is also much higher because the friction is low. Higher level of competition, lower level of competition, but higher level of stickiness is if you're building hardware that plugs into other hardware. Not many people can build hardware. So if you're good with electronics and some software, maybe that's the area that you're strong in and you can compete over there because once you install a mapping dash cam in your car, you're not going to change that till that thing conks out, right? Or something 100x comes better. But another good way is, and I think if you look at all our unicorns in India in a lot of ways, they are operationally heavy on-ground companies, right? Your Swiggy, Zomato, whatever, Amazon, you name it, right? So in India, we're good with these real-world problems. So I think if you focus on this layer zero of solving operationally heavy or real-world related problems, I think that's where developers and entrepreneurs in developing countries should build in the area of DePIN of because it's a useful thing to solve and they have direct experience in it.
Amazing advice. I'm pretty sure a lot of these will find inspirations in this new sort of a deep in age, and we will see some exciting use cases brewing from India, built for the Indian audience. Thanks, Karam. It was amazing speaking with you, getting to know your journey into Web3, getting to deep dive into Dabba and the future plans that you guys have. We wish you the best for the upcoming PRs and token launches and the amazing growth stories, and also on the new tech. I'm pretty sure it's going to be exciting to see a lot of things come under one roof. Really excited, and I appreciate your time again.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I had awesome fun talking about this stuff.